So for the programming assignment for CS1102, it is essentially just giving us practice in creating separate classes in a Java program. So a Java program can consist of more than one class, and those classes can be in separate files in the same project folder. All right, so we know we're going to have two files at the end of the project. So let's get right into how we divide or modify our existing program, which is a single Java file, into two files. All right, we first want to look at what the original file would have been. All right, just to note that, here, that if you're using replit.com to experiment with the code for whatever reason, that you'll need to have this class called main in order for it to run, and you can't call the file quiz.java, okay? So I'll just change the name to main so that we can run it. You'll see that the program works. This is from the previous unit, week number 3. So I'm just running it to test it to make sure that it works. My questions here are not very entertaining, but it's just for a demonstration. So I type A for the option here. It says incorrect. Correct answer is D, and I can try C here. It's correct. Let me try E for the next one. It says incorrect. I got 1 out of 3. Okay, so here we are with the program that we're supposed to modify, and we're supposed to create two files from this single file program. So we need to find the best place to divide this file. Now, if we understand the question, we should have a multiple choice question which takes in the question that we'll be asking. So this string query will actually contain the question that we'll be asking, such as how many um, um, types of dogs are there, or something like that. This will be the different answer. You could say like 20, a million, 1,000, etc. String answer, this will be which one of those is the answer. So you'd put C if C is the correct answer. We know this from the previous program. All right. And we see here that the multiple choice question has a method called ask and check. So if we look back at our existing program, ask and check are in this top section here. So we can pretty much separate our program here. All right. I'm using this comment just to show you where we could split the program here, because everything above there contains what we need. All right. If you want to examine it a bit more, you'll see that. Let me just prove this some more. It says there should be a main method in class quiz. So the file that is called quiz, when we split our files into two, this one will have the main method. So because the main method is down here, the public static void main method, and we know that this is going to be in file quiz, we could separate it actually here with this, okay? And then everything above would be multiple choice question. Hope this makes sense. If you see where everything is divided, so the class variables are in multiple choice question, and where are the variables in this original program here? They're already at the top. So I'm suggesting here that this top half here is going to be one class. It can be self-contained because you really don't start running the program until you get to public static void main anyway. All right, so let's try this out. All right, and what we're going to do is let's add a file. Let's call it multiple choice question.java. All right, so we're encouraged to use copy and paste to get our work done. So let me just copy it first. So let me copy the code from this section here. All right, and let me paste it into multiple choice question.java. Let me try that again. All right, there we go. All right, of course, I'm gonna call this class multiple choice question. All right, so this file, as I mentioned before, will be called quiz, all right, because we'll be splitting the files into two. If you're using Eclipse, you don't have a problem because you can easily use the same names as the class names in the files. It's just that Replit has this limitation. So if you're using Eclipse and you're following me with this program, you can create your project by simply right-clicking on your project folder, clicking New, and then Class. And when you get to name here, you simply type in multiple choice question. All right, and then you can go ahead and you can finish, and it will add. I already have it here, but you can click finish, and it would add a new file that you can copy the code over into. All right, so you can name the files and the classes as the appropriate names that you want. This really should be called quiz. I just use new quiz because I was experimenting before, but you would actually call this quiz and not new quiz. So I have my two files here in Eclipse and they work fine. But if you're using Replit, Replit is pretty easy to use. It's very fast. So you just need to remember that for the quiz class, you have to call it main to run the program, but you can change the name back to quiz when you're sending in your code to your instructor. It should be a capital Q. All right, so that's all that you'd need to do, right? But if you want it to run, you'll have to call it main. All right. So having said that, this is the file that we'll be working as quiz. So let me just put a comment probably up top here. This is the quiz file. All right, and of course we know this is the multiple choice question file because the class name is there. All right, so we don't need to actually change this to main because this is the second file. This won't have a main method stub. All right, so far we have our two files here. That the question requires. We just need to know, make sure that they have all the requirements. So they should have the class variables for the number of questions and the number of correct answers. Let's check that. So number of correct questions, number of correct answers, that's already there. We need we need variables for the question string and correct answer string. All right, so that's important because we don't want any of the variables to be in the quiz class. They need to be in the multiple choice question class, all right? So we already have so we need the question string and correct answer string. So those are string variables. Let's add these string variables. All right. So it said we need a question string and we need a correct answer string. Come on, spelling. Correct answer. Yeah, that's what we wanted. Okay, great. So we've taken care of let me just put here done and done. All right, so we've done that. Now, multiple choice question needs a constructor with 7 parameters. Um, right, with 7 parameters, 7 string parameters, and they actually tell us what it should be. So we don't even have to really think about this because what we're actually here doing in Unit 4 programming assignment is actually practicing and learning how to build constructors, how to build separate classes. So you may not understand everything all at once, but you'll get the practice or the habit of adding it. So we just need to literally add this constructor in, and that's what we're going to do. All right, okay, so I have typed this ahead of time to save time. So let's just go ahead and put that constructor in exactly as they want us to. All right, and I sort of explained how this worked before, but I will do that again. Of course, the constructor is a function, so it needs a function body. So let's put in our curly braces and just press enter to make some space there. So we're going to have the wording of the question here, and then we're going to have the different answers that are going to be possible, and then they're going to be added here. So this is not actually finished yet. We actually need to set this to what it needs to be. So here's how we're going to fill in the constructor. Now, in case you might not have remembered from the textbook reading, the constructor is a function that has the same name as a class. So notice we have multiple choice question here, and the class is called multiple choice question. A constructor has the same name as its class, and it will always be called anytime the object is created. More on that later, but let's get into it. So let's actually fill this constructor here with some variable assignments. Now, we need to make sure that the question, when we add the question in the quiz, because we're gonna come back to where we add the question in the quiz. This is gonna be the quiz over here, right? We're gonna need to actually send this in as a query, okay? So because we're sending this is as a query, here's how we're gonna set up the constructor. We are going to say that question, remember we created a question string variable because the question must be asked of the program for it to run, okay? If we go back to, all right, let me just finish typing this first and then I'll explain it. And then we're going to say query. Why query? Because remember query is a string here, right, that we're going to be taking from the user in the main program. We'll see that working out as we complete the program. We want a new line here because we don't want the question answers A, B, C, D, E to be stuck onto the top of the question there. All right, so just to remind you, let me go back to the main program. Oh, it's actually the quiz program. I'm calling it main because that's technically what it is. Visual here. So the string query is going to be the top part here. How many questions will I ask? That's going to contain that part. And of course, string A would contain one question. B would say two questions, four questions. So all of these are strings that are going to contain whatever is sent to the constructor. For this to make more sense to you, I think I should show you how the constructor will actually be used. That might make more sense to help you to understand what's going on here. Let me show you how the constructor would be used. Constructor would be used in this way. In real life practice, that's how it would look. Okay, so above what you saw was the template. This is actually what the let me change the color of this so that it looks different. Um, from the rest of stuff. So, all right. So you see here that this first part here matches string query. Then this string here, one question would go to string A. Two questions that you see here in the quotes would go, and you see it's separated by commas. Not sure if this highlight is really the best way to see it. Let me try to change the color. Um, let me use red. Okay, and let me just try to underline where each string is. All right, so you see each of these would be the different argument that's sent to the function. These are the actual arguments sent to the function, to the constructor. So notice here it's multiple choice question, open bracket, and you'd be sending all of these. Okay, this is just a little bit of a preview to show you how it will look so that it kind of makes sense to see how this actually ties in to the query. How many questions will I ask? Notice I started here. If I could get this up the top here, that would be really great. So we could visualize it all at once. Let me just try to see if I can get the screenshot up. Perfect. So notice here now that where I have string query in the constructor, that's actually going to be responsible for this message being displayed at the top. Um, Option A that says one question, that goes into string A. Answer B, two questions, that goes into string B, and so on, okay? So this is just to help you to visualize everything, all right? So hope you understand what I'm trying to show you here. But let's get back to the code. Now that you have a visual idea of what we're doing here. So we're going to put the constructor back on just as they gave us. So we were told to use this exact constructor that I'm going to be putting on the screen now. So that was not up for us to decide. Of course, it's a function, so we need to open the curly braces to create the function body. And as we said before, we have to use a string that will give us, so this return type for the method is missing. Okay, right. So we have, let me go back to the document. Just to so we have to take in the query, okay? The query is going to be the first thing that the person sends in, and that's going to be what our question is going to be asking. How many questions will I ask is my question. So we did create the question variable here. Remember at the top here, we created a variable to store the question received uh, received from string query. Okay, so we're getting the question from the string query. Let me expand this a bit. So remember, string query is here in the constructor. Let's go ahead and fill that in. So remember, we're getting the question, we're accepting the question from string query, so we'll have to make it equal to query, because that's what the user is going to be sending. We're adding a new line because we want it to be formatted properly. As you can imagine, when we had the show message box, let me go scroll back there. You see there that the questions are on a new line, okay? As you see there. So that's why we need the /n to start. Okay. Let's see here. Right. I'm getting these underlines because this should be called multiple choice question. All right. That way it'll be identified as a constructor. Okay. I just overlooked that. All right. So that takes care of the top part, which is the question. Okay. Then you need to have the answers being added to the message box. So remember that we're going to plus equal to add the options, okay? So we're going to add option A, right? And beside option A, we need to actually add what the person types in for the string. And the string is going to be called A because remember we have string A at the top here, okay? So we're adding in option A plus we need to have a new line to give it some space. All right, so that it doesn't stick onto the next question here. So what this first line here does here would be what we see. Let me just show you in a second here. This will be what we see here. Okay, I typed in one question here and I sent it to the constructor. Maybe I should make this black instead. Right. So this how many questions will I ask? That will be the string query there. This is string A. And string A means that, you know, let me just type it here on the screen. It means that A would be equal to this string here, one question. That's essentially what's happening there, right? Not capital A, but a lowercase a. So when we go over here to the program and you see me type um, plus A here, this is me actually adding in the string variable, okay? Hope you understand that point because all the others just simply repeat that. So I'm just going to simply copy in the rest of, because they simply repeat that style. All right, so hope you understand how I explained that first, why we have the plus A there in that. So let me just go ahead and fill in the others because they basically take the same pattern. It's if you get the first line, you get the others because you have to add the variables, string variables B, C, D, E from whatever the user sends in. Okay. Then now we're asked to make sure that we set it to uppercase because the user could type lowercase e. And we want to make sure that we don't get an invalid answer because it was a lowercase. So we have to force it to be uppercase. So we're going to make sure that whatever the correct answer they choose is set to an uppercase, and we use the toUpper function to handle that. Sorry, got that spelled incorrectly. Right. We use the toUppercase. All right. So that will force our correct answer to be uppercase, whatever they put in. Because remember, we're taking not just string A, string B, string D, string E, but we're also taking string answer. Okay. If I go back to the screenshot, um, you see here that right here it is. Let me just get this out of the way for now. You see here that the answer is E. Okay, so where you have string answer at the top here in the template that I gave you for the constructor, this is actually what it corresponds to. It corresponds to the E that I would have sent here. So this E would be equal to string answer at the top here. Okay, and that's what really is happening. So that's why we're using string answer, making sure that it's created sent to uppercase. Okay. All right. I think the constructor is finished now, and we can move on to let me just bring this indent back up. We can move on to actually dealing with the other aspects of the code, which involve the check method and ask methods. So method is another name for function. All right, and in our previous program, remember that we had, sorry about that, remember that we had the ask as a method, and we had the check as a method, and it's still there. Okay, so that hasn't changed, so that is still there. We should have, sorry, we should have the function called ask already defined. So it checks to make sure that the answer is true, while true answer is equal to one of these options. That looks fine there. All right, so we already have those inside this class. So what that means is that to access them, we would need to say, using the dot operator, let me go over here and show you. We need to say the name of the object dot the method. We'll show you how we create the object when we get to the quiz class, okay? But for now, we just need to make sure that the class multiple choice question has method ask and method check. Does it have method ask and method check? So here is method ask. So we've got that there, and here is method check. Here is method check. All right, so we've got those there already. Let's go back and see what else we need to make sure we have. Then we need to have a method called show results. Okay. I think the reason we need this is that in our quiz job, I keep calling it main just because Replit has to use main. We have a J option pane show message that shows that's a part of the main. So we'll need to actually take that out and make it be a part of a function in the multiple choice quiz. So we need to copy this. This is going to be removed here from here because we're actually going to place it in a class by itself. But for now, let me just copy it. I'm not going to delete it. All right, and let's go back over to the multiple choice. All right, so we already have our ask and check methods. So we just need to create. All right, why is this complaining? Oh, right, the class body wouldn't be complete because I need another curly bracket. So we actually have to check the compiler um, often to make sure the interpreter to make sure that we see. All right, so multiple choice question quiz class. All right, great. Let me just put a comment here that will help me. End of class multiple choice question. All right, great. So everything needs to be above there to be included in the class. All right, so we need a method. The method should be called show results. All right, so I'm gonna make it static void show results. All right, it's not going to return anything. It's because it's going to be displaying something. We'd say print, but it's not technically not print because we're using the J option pane. So it's going to show a dialog box, and we have the code already from the main function, so we just pasted it in there. All right, it's complaining about something. All right, we should not have had I've split the parentheses there. So yeah, right, that's what it was complaining about. All right, so the J option pane has let me see if I can widen the screen a bit just so that we can have it looking a little bit neater here. So this is for the J option pane. No, sorry, let me see here. This one is an extra. We don't actually need this, right? Because we had too many curly brackets there. Okay, so we have our show results method created. So here is the show results method. Here is method show results. It might seem obvious, but I'm putting this comment there so that we see that this a function is basically the same thing as a method, right? You can use the terms interchangeably. So we have our three methods. Let's go back over to the checklist. So I can put here done. All right, and copy that, and we have the method check. So we have done that, and we have show results. So we have done that. All right. So I think we are done with multiple choice question. We did create the class variables here, so we have done for that, and we've marked. We did add the string and correct answer string variables, so we are done with that. We did also include the 7 string parameters, so we are done with that. Oh, I think we did not. Let's see. Let's go back to the question and make sure that we have does the method check for the correct answer class method show results. Mm, all right, okay, so the rest of the question now relates to the quiz class. So we're done. So we are done with the multiple choice question now. So this part here, um this all right, the final part relates to the quiz class. Okay, so all of this here relates to the quiz class. All right, so now let's go to does the main method class in quiz use a multiple choice question object? So we need to create an object now in the quiz class. Here we go. All right, so we're finished with the multiple choice class. Let's go back to main, and here's where we're going to start making some changes to main. All right, so first thing now is that we're gonna remove this code, which is now handled by multiple choice quiz. Okay, so we'll remove that code. And you'll understand why we do that because we're actually making the program more efficient. And all it's going to have is the public static main void function calling everything else. All right. Now, can we say check question? We can't say check question because we don't have um, we do not have the check function in this file anymore. So we have to create an object to be able to use this. Okay, so all of this will have to. It's not going to be. We're not going to be using this anymore. It's not going to be like this anymore because we're going to be using constructors. We're not going to be assigning the variables directly. And all of this we've already taken care of in the J option pane, so we're going to delete that. Right, so here we have a scary, empty, we have an extra um, curly brace there. All right, now record expected. Okay, we're going to take care of that. Now let's add in our constructor for the object. We're going to create an object. Objects are created using constructors. What was the name of our constructor before? Do you remember? It's multiple choice quiz. That is our constructor because we need to create an object from the class. Let's expand this to look at the file. We need to create an object from multiple choice quiz and to be able to use all of the methods and variables that are over there. So you create an object by first starting out with the name of the object, the name of the class, sorry. So it's multiple choice question. It's like you're declaring a type of a variable. I did not spell that correctly. There we go. And we're going to call it question. The object is we're going to be creating is going to be called question. So if we go back to the right, it says we should use a multiple choice object, all right? And I'm calling it question. Uh, you can call it any name you want, but since we're talking about quizzes and questions, I'm going to call it question. And we use a new keyword to create the object, and you always repeat the name of the. Let me just copy this. Can't bother with all this typing really. And if it didn't take any parameters, normally this is all we would need to end the creation of the object. So we now have an object called question. So we could do things like we could call question dot check. We could now do that, okay? Because question is now a fully created object, and we do have the check method in the multiple choice question class. So we are far from finished because even though we technically have the code, we have to make some changes. Um, Now there's an error being flagged here in my method, check method that the object is referencing here because we have things differently now. In the functions, we're not going to be taking any parameters here in our check function because the constructor does that. Right? So it's going to have a void parameter list. And also for ask, the string question is passed to our constructor. If you remember, if we just go, um, yeah, if we just look at the top here, see, we have string query here, ABC and answer. All of that is taken care of by the constructor. So we have that removed from our function. So it's an empty parameter list. Okay. So we're not going to be okay. So where we had let's go to ask. Let's examine ask. Where we had um, J option pane show input dialog on static field question. So I'm making the function static, so it would only be it would not be available. I couldn't use the variables anywhere else. So these functions, these methods cannot be static. That's why I have to be careful with the specifiers. They make a difference. The method ask is not applicable for the argument string. Yeah, it doesn't take it's not going to take a string because remember that we said that the constructor takes care of the parameters that string would normally ask, which is the the string query that's here. So we need to remove this parameter. All right. Right, so these are the modifications that we need to do to our function. And why these functions change the way they did is simply because of what the constructor takes over so much of the work that we do not accept arguments in the functions. The functions simply check what the variables do. And if you make the functions, the method static, then they won't be they won't be accessible by other functions. So I had to remove the static keyword. So I hope that makes sense, okay? All right. This is just coming back to me really right now. So, all right. Well, at least you get an idea of what happens if your program is giving an error, what could be possibly causing it. Those specifiers, static, public, that's what we call specifiers. They can change how your methods work. All right. But having said all of that, let's see if we can now test our program. So let's go back to main. All right. So our object question.check is fine now because it should satisfy the actual and formal. If you look over here in the console area, it said the actual and formal argument list differ in length. They're now the same in length because it's void here, and over on our question class, the check is also void for with parameters, okay? So this should be able to run. We just have one question here added, as you can see in the constructor for the object, but it should be able to run with that one question. So let's go ahead and test it out now and see what we get. All right, it's compiling. And we get our first question being shown on the screen. How many questions will I ask? Well, I know the answer is 5, so let me select E. It says correct. All right, it doesn't show the results though. So if this was the end of the program for me, I would need for it to show the results. So for me to show the results, it's usually at the end of all of the questions. So let's assume that this was the end of all of the questions, right? Then we would call show results. And where is show results going to be called from? Because we're not creating an object to use show results. We're going to be calling it from a class that we can access. Okay? And show results is from what class? It's from multiple choice question. Multiple choice question. And because it's a member of that class, that we're calling a function as a member of that class, show results. All right. So how does this work and why does this work? Let me close that there. Why didn't we do question dot? Why didn't we say question dot show results? And why did we do multiple choice question dot show results? Well, let's go ahead and look at the class multiple choice question and see how it is set up. The show results is a static um, show. It's only going to be this can only be called directly from the class itself. All right, and you would say, okay, but doesn't sh isn't show results inherited from everything that the object would be created from multiple choice question? Well, let's try. Well, first of all, let's try to run it as is, and then let's do it. Let's try to experiment and do it the other way. Let's see if we get the results shown when we run the class this way. All right, so the answer is E. I'm gonna ask 5 questions. Just one question we have, correct? And it shows the results. You got one correct out of one question. All right, let's try to use question dot show results. All right, notice that it starts complaining the static method show results from the type multiple choice could not be should be accessed in a static way. Should be accessed in a static way. You see what it's complaining about? All right, because we do have the specifier static here. All right, static void show results. Now, if we remove the specifier, all right, and then go back to our quiz, it's not complaining anymore. All right, so the specifiers determine everything, okay, and how they can be accessed. So always be careful of the specifiers, okay? So if I wanted to access it by using multiple choice question dot show results, then I put static there. If I don't, I can just I remove the static and then I can now access it this way. So whenever you're creating your methods, just be careful of the specifier that you give it, because that will either restrict or grant access to the method. So if I want the object table to access this method freely, then I remove the static and I can go ahead and use the method from the object. So it's really just a matter of experimenting for you to get this idea. Anyhow, let's go to the conclusion, which we want to do is to add more questions. It's really simple after this, right? Well, we show results at the very end of it. To add more questions, you'll simply fill in new constructors for new objects. So let me copy this as a template, for example, and paste this here. This would be my second question, but I would have to give it a new variable name, so I could call it question 1, okay? So we have question here, then we have question 1, okay? And then at the end of that, I need to check question after that. I need to call check question after, because remember, you should check after each question. All right, that's important for you to do. Multiple choice question 1, the value of the local variable question 1 is not used. Okay, it will be used soon. All right, so that's how it works. And then what you would eventually have, you just add your question one by one by one because it follows the same pattern, okay? You have the questions and you check the questions, and at the end of everything, you show the results. So because we know we need several questions in our program, what does a full quiz program look like? So I went ahead and typed that up ahead of time to save the time of typing, and let's see what that would look like. Let me go ahead and paste this in here. All right, so I've added additional questions, and as you can see, as I said, it takes the same sequence. You create new objects for each question because the constructor is going to load them with these string parameters, okay? So I have an object here called question, an object called question1, an object called question2. And remember that objects are created using the new keyword and the constructor. So again, that's why it's important for you to read the chapter about objects and constructors. It really helps you before you get to this section here where I am showing you how you would create your object in your separate quiz class for your complete program to access the multiple choice question class. Okay, so we did remove the static from the method so we can access it directly. So for each of these, I need to say question um, dot show results. No, just not for each of these, just for that one. Again, I didn't spell the word question correctly. Question, come on, spelling. Right, so if you want to be able to use the methods directly, don't make them static. So that was the point of that. But as you can see here, we have 5 objects created with 5 constructors, loading the constructors with 7 string variables. And this is our full complete program now. Let's go ahead and run it. And we should be asked 5 questions. Okay, we have an error. Let's see, it's on. Okay, what are we missing here? Okay, oh, here's a notification here. It says delete this right. Do we have too many? Think we had, okay, I think this should have been the closing curly bracket. So I had one too many. Okay, that's why you have to be careful when you're copying and pasting. All right, now let's run this program once more. All right, so let's start off with the correct answer. E, correct. How many questions are left? Oh, so I'm just asking some very weird questions, okay? But you would have your own type of questions which are unique. You can ask something like, um, how many colors are there in the rainbow? You know, whatever you want to say. Let me just put some incorrect answers for most of these. Um, all right, incorrect, incorrect. Okay, I didn't want it to be shrunk. What happened to it here? Okay, this is weird. Let me stop it and start it again. Well, it should have given me the end where, because the last thing that we want it's going to do here is it's going to show the results. All right, so let me get this correct. I'm not sure what I clicked before, but yeah, let's go again. All right, I'll just keep selecting A all the way through and see what it does. All right, so I got that correct. So I got 2 correct out of 5 questions, and there our program is complete. So remember, I'm able to run this because I changed the name of the class to main, just for testing purposes. But when you're saving your file, if you're using Replit, please change the name of the class back to quiz. All right, and change and rename the main.java as quiz.java when you're sending in your files um, to your instructor, okay? But just for testing purpose, you'll need to call it main if you're using replit.com. If you are using Eclipse, you do not have this issue, and you can simply create the files individually as shown before by right-clicking on the project folder, going to new class, and just type in the name of the class that you should be using there, okay? So if you're using Eclipse, it's much easier, but understand that some persons, for whatever reasons, maybe you're using an internet cafe or a laptop that's not yours, it doesn't have Eclipse on it, then you can use Replit to do your question and it will work perfectly fine. Just remember that you have to change it to main for the top class, for the quiz class, just to be able to run it. But when you're saving your code, change the text back to quiz. All right, so that's it for this, and hope that you understood and were able to follow through.